For trading it all.
Well, welcome back, everyone. And my next guest is Marco, and I hope I'm saying it right. It's Balzano. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, pretty close. Balzano.
Balzano, and he is the owner of Scottsdale Apraisal Specialists, LLC. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do.
I am a personal property appraiser. A lot of people get me confused with real property appraisers. Matter of fact, the other day I was pulling up to a property, or pulling up to a estate, got to the guard shack and told the gentleman, I'm Marco with Scottsdale Appraisal Specialist, and he said, "Oh, I'm really interested to know what that house is worth." So the easiest way to explain what I do is I appraise everything inside the house, not the house itself.
Right. So let's talk about this. First of all, who would need an appraisal?
I do appraisals for divorce, for estate settlement, taxable estates. So when income tax is involved, that's usually if the estate is 5.2 or $3 million or more. Insurance coverage, damage claims. Those are primarily the areas of my focus of my business.
Okay. Now, when you work with somebody, you say you're statewide.
Yes, I travel statewide. I've actually been out of state. I just recently went to Dallas to do a donation appraisal. This gentleman was donating a lot of AV equipment to a church. So they called me. The gentleman called here looking for an appraiser. I was referred by another appraiser, and they flew me out, did the appraisal, and mailed it back to him.
So there's a lot of things that you would appraise. It's not just, there's many things.
You never know what you find in a house. So if you can just imagine what you have in your house, those are the items I come across. So you have to have a very broad knowledge of just
I didn't know they would be appraisable. Is anything appraisable? You would think that something's being appraised has got to be a lot of money to begin with. Is that true or no?
Not true.
There you go.
Everything has a value. It could be $5, it could be $5,000, it could be $50,000, but everything has a value.
So when you come into someone's house, do you do how does it work? Do you do a consultation? What does it work? How does it work when you're working with them? What's the process?
Well, initially, if I'm doing an insurance appraisal, I'll meet with the client. We'll walk around, look at what they have, get an idea of the scope of work, what I need to do. Then we proceed with the nuts and bolts of the appraisal, going around, documenting everything, measuring, photographing it. Then we head back to our office, and that's where all the nitty gritty comes in. Do research, and then put the appraisal report together, contact the client, mail it back to them. Now, in cases of estate settlement, I'm working with a trusted officer or an attorney. The same process.
Okay, I'm going to ask you something a little bit off the cuff. Okay, is it a good idea when someone is obviously they've moved into their home, they've lived there a while? When is the right time to call you? Is my question to ask you, and I'm going to tell you why. I lost my house in an earthquake, so I didn't do that. Would it be a good idea for me to have called way before, to have, or as I was incurring things or buying things or what have you? When is the right time to call you to have you come in? Because if you say that you're working with an insurance agency, is that after something happened or before?
That's generally before.
It is.
Yes. This gentleman, people have collections, and they need to add these collections to their insurance policy to get a rider. And the insurance company generally requires a written appraisal.
So that's when they would call you. If you have something of value that you think is important, which a lot of people have a lot of things that they think would be important to them too.
A lot of people do. And a lot of people are not necessarily, they don't know what they have. They don't know what the value of what they have. And there's been many situations where I've been into a home appraising an item, and they show me this other item that they have. They think it has very little value, but it's actually more valuable than what I'm appraising. So it's always a good idea to just have an inventory of what you have in your house, what is of value, what is not of significant value. That way, in case of loss, you know what you have.
So he's statewide. His phone number is 602-996-1299. The website is Scottsdale Appraisal Specialists with an S?
Yes, with an S.
.com. And you call them. Get it done before anything happens. Okay, so let's say you're going in there and you're looking. What is fair market value, and are there different types of value?
Fair market value is the value that's most commonly used. That would be for estate settlement, divorce, those types of situations. It is what an item would sell for in the open market with a willing buyer, willing seller, both parties having knowledge of what is being sold, and also what's the best market for that item. So let's say you're wanting to sell a chair. The best market for that chair might be in Boston. Would it be best to ship it to Boston to get that added value, adding the shipping, or to sell it here in Phoenix? And also with fair market value, there's no compulsion to sell. So you can sell that chair. You can have that chair out of the market for a week, a month, 2 months. There's no compulsion to sell.
Does it matter what it is in the house? And I want to know in value, can you appraise anything? Can you appraise a chair? Can you appraise coins? Can you appraise stamps? Is it, because that's in people's homes. Mm-hmm. Can you appraise anything? Or do you have to, is there an area special that you work with, or is it anything?
The only thing I stay away from is jewelry. Jewelry is an entirely different animal all upon itself. There are some very good jewelry appraisers that I recommend and that I refer out to. But, I do guns, coins, stamps. Stamps, I tend to refer those out. Automobiles, anything that's inside the house, I can appraise.
Okay, so that's what I want to know, because there's a lot of people have a lot of different collections of a lot of different things. So you're statewide. His phone number is 602-996-1299. The website, you can check him out there. I've been on your website before too. It's Scottsdale Appraisal Specialists with an S.com. And so what is the difference between an auction and an estate sale?
An estate sale, you're relying on someone that they'll assign a value to those particular items. An auction, that's where you can really get your best money for an item, because you'll have 2 people, 3 people, 4 people bidding against that one item. If those 2 people really want that item, they'll drive the price up. In a estate sale, you're relying on the knowledge of that person to value your item. So they might value it correctly. They might undervalue it.
Well, were you down on that one?
Yes, I was down on that
I
one.
wasn't sure because you had stopped. Okay, this is a great question. So let's say someone has inherited some things from their great-grandparents or what have you. Does the fact that they have been in the family so long make them more valuable?
Age doesn't necessarily equate to value. A lot of people, I hear this question all the time. Well, it's old. It's 100 years old. It must be valuable. It really isn't. Value equates to need. If someone has something that's 100 years old that is one of a kind, very unique, that will have a lot more value than something that is 30 years old, 20 years old. It really depends what market you want, what type of item you have.
Right, I would imagine so, because I might have a bull, that I thought was cool from somebody 100 years ago, but it probably doesn't have much value. It may be if it's signed, that might make it more valuable, right?
It might make it more valuable. It might make it more valuable if it's sterling silver or if it's silver plate.
Okay. Oh, and that's another thing.
Yeah, those items, if it's crystal or pressed glass, those items, those weigh into value more so than age and quality. So
I want to ask this because it's important, and I don't want you to not get this out. Is there a set price that all appraisals charge?
We charge by the hour, and no, there is not a set price.
So how can someone choose a good appraiser?
You want to choose an appraiser who's been in the business for several years. You want to make sure they've gone through all the training. You want to make sure they're USPAP certified. USPAP is Universal Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. And that is the minimum report writing standards that real and personal property appraisers have to abide by. Now, I also belong to the International Society of Appraisers, and our standards exceed USPAP requirements.
Well, he's statewide. His phone number is 602-996-1299. His website is Scottsdale Appraisal Specialists with an S.com. Again, 602-996-1299.
Do you have IRS tax problems? Are they keeping you up at night? If your tax problems